Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Storytime. I know the first one wasn't the most popular video on earth, but I still feel it's important to document these little stories about me that I otherwise wouldn't be telling. For this one, we're once again going back to around the same time period as the previous video, 2011, and why you should never force me to do something that I don't want to do, even if you think it's for my benefit. I'm a very stubborn person when it comes to these sorts of things. So the story is, it's 2011, or maybe it was late 2010. I'm pretty sure it was sometime early in 2011. I was in year 11, the final year of secondary school, or high school here in the UK. And in this particular year, we have something in the UK that we call GCSEs. I think the closest thing in American schools is finals week. It's sort of the great big exams you have towards the end of your time in school before you go on to further education, like college, university, or sixth form, as could be the case here in the UK. You've got your three main subjects, English, maths, and science, though for me science was split into three, physics, chemistry, and biology. I got C grades in English and maths and biology, D's in physics and chemistry, and one of the electives I took was history, which, if you looked at my results, you'd think I hated history because I got an E, but actually I love history. I mean, look at some of the games I've played on this channel, World of Tanks, World of Warships. I love history. I just hated the history that they were teaching me. I mean, I didn't care about who invented Listerine or stuff. This story is about something that happened during the maths course, the subject. We had, as always, our mock exams and all that, and eventually it came time for the exam proper, the final GCSE exam. I don't remember exactly when it was. I think it was sometime early in January. I don't remember. It's been 13 years now, or 12 years. So yeah, we've had our mock exam, and then eventually we have the proper exam itself, and we leave the exam and all swell. And sometime later we get our results, and they were read out in class, and they got to me, and I had 2 C's, I think, because it was 2 different tests in the exam. You had the multiple choice where you were allowed your calculator, and then the one where you had to do all the long division and multiplication and whatnot, stuff that you don't need. So all the results got read out by our teacher, well, my class's teacher, Mrs. Hutchins. Hutchins? I think it was Hutchins. And if I recall correctly, she looked rather disappointed at the end of reading that list. And apparently so had all the other maths teachers, because everyone got brought into one classroom, and all the maths teachers told us that they felt we could have done better with our results. They felt that some of the people who got B's should have got A's, some of the people who got C's should have got B's, and, likewise. By the way, here in the UK, we don't have A+, A-, sort of grades. We go just straight A, B, C, D, except for A star, which is like A+, I guess, in the US. We even go as far down as G, which is like the worst kind of grade you can get, and then there's the U grade, which isn't actually a grade at all. It literally stands for ungraded, which means you did so poorly that you didn't even deserve a grade. So, there were some students who felt, I probably could have done better, and will give the exam a resit. Which is where you do the exact same exam. Well, not the exact same, the paper's gonna be different, but they're giving you the chance to improve your grade. There's only really one resit per exam. I, however, was not one of those students. Sure, I wasn't exactly a model student, but I wasn't a troublemaker either. I was just someone who kept to myself, having Asperger's. It wasn't easy in school. But I was already someone who didn't like to put in a huge amount of work. And I didn't want to resit the maths exam. I heard that. I had a C grade, which meant, as far as I was concerned, I was done. I didn't want to do any more. So as far as I was concerned, that was my job done. I was done with maths in school forever, except for there were still some mandatory classes, I think. I don't remember. Like I said, years ago. But all the maths teachers were of the opinion that we should all resit the exam. And, well, somehow a letter got to my mum. Now, I don't remember if it was me who sent it, who gave it to my mum, if they handed it to me, or if it was sent in the post. But either way, it got to my mum. Now, the letter said something along the lines of, "We, the maths department, are disappointed that your child did not do as well as we thought they should have. So we are suggesting that they resit the exam." That's not verbatim, except for the one word suggesting, or suggest. In the end, it was just a suggestion that I resit the exam to get a better grade. You know, a suggestion, it's optional. It gives the impression of a choice. But I guess what they really wanted it to say was, "We want your child to retake the exam no matter what. We don't care what your child wants. We want that child to retake this exam, whatever the cost." And I guess my mum read exactly what they wanted to say, what they meant to say, what they should have said on this letter, because she also got hell-bent on me retaking this exam. So I was now suddenly revising maths when I didn't want to. We were taking extra maths in class. My mum even signed me up for in fact, it wasn't even an after school, it was a weekend revision session. I'd been to one before. I can't remember what it was for exactly, but you know, you go to the school on Saturday to revise for maths, and my mum signed me up for it. And all this time I was telling her, "Mum, don't bother, I don't want to do this." And she's like, "No, you're going to redo this exam. I want you to have a better grade." And I mean, you can see where she's coming from. But I had it in my head that I didn't want to do this exam, this reset. And everyone was against me. And unfortunately, they activated the precise set of circumstances that makes me really stubborn and the kind of person who doesn't ever want to do what that person wants to do. They were forcing me to do this. But unlike something at home like a chore, it's something I kind of had a choice in. You see, they could force me to take this exam, but they couldn't force me to have a good result. So I told myself that even if I somehow find myself in that exam hall, I'm not doing that exam to the best of my abilities. But, of course, that was assuming I was going to end up in that exam hall in the first place. I was going to make it bloody difficult to put me in that exam hall. So, in class, I couldn't exactly skive off the maths, because I had a teaching assistant. Because of my Asperger's, I had a teaching assistant from the learning support of the school. And so they would be pushing me, and I had no choice when I was still in class. But at home, I could skive off as much as I wanted. Well, to a point anyway. My mum would still chase me, especially when she wasn't helping by taking parts of my computer away. And, of course, she had signed me up for this revision session on a Saturday at some point in the year. So this revision session comes along, and I'm telling my mum I'm not going. Or, words to that effect. Mum, I'm not going. Don't bother. I'm not gonna go. And I'm kind of terrible when it comes to making plans. I think I was even telling her, I don't remember, but I may well have been telling her that I'm just gonna go home as soon as you drop me off, and she coerced me into the car. She was making threats. I was in Air Cadets at the time. She was paying for me to be in Air Cadets, and she was threatening along the lines of, if you don't go, I'm going to stop taking you to Air Cadets. So I got in the car, and I was telling her I'll make my own way home after the revision session. I was just trying to placate her, whatever, fine, I'll go to this revision session. She takes me to the school, drops me off, drives away, and as soon as she's out of sight, I leave the school grounds, start walking to the nearby train station, and I even get on the phone to one of my friends saying, hey, do you mind if I spend a few hours with you? And as he was speaking back to me, suddenly there's an angry tap on my shoulder, an angry yelling, and my mum's there. Somehow she had teleported behind me, but no, she hadn't actually left. She just left the school grounds, but the way the roads are, there was a big bush that she was hiding behind, and she was watching the main road towards the train station, saw me walking away, and I should have waited a bit longer, but I thought my mum had driven her back home. So what was she gonna do? Was she going to take me into the school and make sure I was sat there? No, she decided that I wasn't going to revise maths anymore. I was going to come home and do chores. So, that makes no sense. You want me to revise for the maths exam, but you're not going to take me to the revision session? Because I guess she thought I was going to leave, and I was going to try and leave. But even so, that didn't work out, unfortunately. I wasted some of my day doing chores of some description. Meanwhile, at various points during maths class, I don't remember all the exact words, like I said, 12 years ago now. But the teachers, you're doing this exam. I'm not doing this exam. I'm probably the only person in this class who's not taking part in this exam. It felt like the entire faculty of the school, and my mum and my stepfather, were all trying to get me to do this bloody exam resit that, if they had just been a bit more gentle about it, or just accepted my answer, I probably wouldn't have minded so much. But the fact that they were forcing me to do this, I was a teenager. I was 16. I was going to rebel. And rebel I did. So, anyway, the day of the exam comes. I go to school, get on the bus and whatever, and I know that the way we had exams was we would go to the canteen, and then we would be led into the assembly hall, which had been turned into the exam hall. The canteen and assembly were connected by a set of doors. So, on the bus to school, I'm making plans. I'm going to make sure that I don't take this exam. Or, try not to be taken into the exam hall. I was going to go straight to, I can't remember what we called it, form time? What the Americans call it as homeroom. I was going to go straight to where my class usually formed up before school properly began, and I was going to try and not take the exam. But the moment I stepped off the bus, there was Mr. Balaam. He was one of the school's higher teachers. He was kind of like the vice headmaster in a way, the assistant headmaster. He just had a very important role. He did all sorts of things.
And in this particular occasion, he was there to enforce my being in the exam room. The moment I stepped off the bus, he was there. Come on then, still guns, you're going to the canteen. And he was going to make sure I stayed in there. Everyone was keeping an eye on me. They even brought me in right next to the doors to make sure there were several pairs of eyes on me at any given time, to make sure I didn't skive off. So they start calling the names in alphabetical order, who goes where, and eventually they get to me. And of course, my thinking was still, I'm not gonna go into this exam. I'm gonna make it as difficult as I can. They get to my name, and there's whoever, Mrs. Hutchins. Miss Hutchin! It wasn't even Hutchins! Miss Hutchin comes along and personally escorts me into the exam room and to my little desk, which would be my prison for the next 90 minutes or so. So I had failed in my mission to not get into the exam. And for a brief moment, I felt defeat. But for parts of the multiple choice part of the exam, I did answer correctly. But halfway through, I realized, wait, why am I trying to do this correctly? I told myself for all these weeks, maybe even months, that I'm not doing this exam. They have succeeded in their mission to get me into the exam hall, but if they thought I was just gonna bow down and accept defeat the moment I sat in that chair, they were sorely mistaken, and I immediately stopped answering for shit. Sure, at first I was trying to make it look like I was giving it a proper go, like I was getting some questions wrong, and that did affect my grade on the multiple choice part of the test. But as soon as we got to the one where you've got to do all the long form stuff, to draw on a digger or a giraffe on their tests, and I even copied a couple of those, like find the value of X, or find X in this triangle, and I just circled, here it is, where it was literally labelled X. And, I've got to the end of that exam, breezed through it. Well, I guess took a little bit longer than I should have. It was just almost complete nonsense on that second part of the exam. And eventually, the 90 minutes or whatever came to an end. I was finally able to go to class. I don't remember what I said afterwards. I don't know if I said I was intentionally flunking it. Maybe I did. But I felt pretty proud of myself, pretty smug that I had that I had defeated my enemy. Like the saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And in my case, the idiom is, you can put still guns in that exam room, but you cannot make him take the test. I mean, should I have done it properly? Yeah, I guess. But there was no guarantee that my result was going to be a B. Or better, even. I was never a great student. I wasn't. I think maybe in my entire time at school, I only achieved a single A, and it may well have been just a mock exam. There's not even a B on my final GCSEs. It's just C at most. Anyway, I spent more or less the rest of that day feeling pretty happy. Went home. I don't remember if I told my mum about it or not. Maybe I didn't even care. And sometime later, we get the exam results read to us again. And this time, there is no more resit. There is not going to be another resit. That one resit was it. There's only ever 2 runnings of the exam, and I think I'm pretty sure that's it. Maybe there were a couple had a third opportunity, but for this maths exam, there was only ever 2 offerings, and that was it. So they're going through the exam results again. Mrs. Hutchin is up there. Some students have improved. Some have not done as well. But because it's, well, the highest results you've got are the ones that stick. So if you got an A in the first test, but then you got a B in the second test, exam even, then the A was what would stick. If you got C in the first exam and then got an A star in the resit, then the A star is what stuck. Simple stuff. So it didn't matter what result I got in the resit, because I already had a C to my name, so I could have failed completely and still had a C out of all of it. Which is exactly what happened, mostly. Mrs. Hutchin, she got to my name. Still guns. A D for the multiple choice, which I felt rather disappointed that I'd done well enough to get a D. And then a U for the longer choice thing. That was the only time I got a U in anything, and it was the happiest grade it was the happiest I ever felt about getting a grade. I leant back in my chair, crossed my arms, and just had this big smug smile on my face. And Mrs. Hutchin, she looks at me, just this exasperated sigh, and says, "Of course," or something like that. From day one, I had been telling everyone I wasn't doing this exam. And they thought that they could make this horse drink. And they failed. They led me to water. They could not make me drink. Should I have drunk? Yes. But they decided that instead of using the carrot, they were going to use the stick. They were going to force me to do this. And in that, they made an enemy of me. Well, that's the way I saw it. They could have gone about it so much better. But my mind was made up the instant I heard my results the first time. The instant I knew I had a C, that was it. Nothing was gonna... even the gravitational pull of Jupiter, nay, the sun, was gonna move me from my position. Which was, as I've said multiple times now, I'm not doing this exam. I said so many times, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. So many times I told them I don't want to do it. And they ignored me. It wasn't the first time either. So many times they did whatever they wanted and didn't listen to what I wanted, which was not to do the exam, but they still forced me in there. All they had to do was accept that I didn't want to do it, that my answer was no, and yet they decided to make me do it anyway, so I said fuck 'em. I think even if I had the opportunity to go back and do it all again, if they still went about it that way again, with the stick rather than the carrot, I would still, more than likely, not do it. The stick is not the way to go with me. You need to have an incentive. And frankly, being kicked out of Air Cadets, which is what happened in the end, by the way, I did get kicked out of Air Cadets. That's not an incentive, that's the stick. That's the threat. You don't threaten me when it comes to these things.
Don't force me. Just don't.